the JSE looking set to open to weaker global markets this morning as hopes of a ceasefire in Ukraine wane, while the commodity prices, on the other hand, have fallen ahead of a meeting of the oil cartel, Opec. Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer and founder at Makwe Fund Managers, joining us now via the phone line. Dada Masilela, thanks again for staying with us. Let's start with the JSE and how it's opened this morning, with the sentiment, of course, that's driving some of the market moves.
Good morning once more, Tolly. Yes, all because market participants are doubting the intentions of Russia when it comes to the ceasefire, as you said in our intro. And this whole situation was exacerbated by China's March manufacturing activity, which fell more than expected. Market expected for it to go down to 49.8%, but instead it fell to 49.5% for the first time, Tolly, in 5 months. And that's below 50, as above 50 means expansion, as authorities locked down major technology and factory hubs to cap a surge when it comes to COVID-19 cases.
Let's follow up with the commodities side and making significant moves. Specifically, I'm talking here oil prices over the past 24 hours. Talk us through what is the sentiment that's driving these moves?
A very volatile 24 hours, but it only took markets only 3 hours for the Brent crude to fall by more than 5%. And reason being, the U.S. is considering the release of up to 180 million barrels from its strategic petroleum reserves, and told it that is the largest in the near 50-year history of the SPR. Remember, in November, the U.S. announced to release almost 60 million barrels, and the guys are looking to release 1 million barrels per day. Note that the U.S. uses almost 20 million barrels per day. So that will have a significant impact when it comes to the market prices. And remember, as we're talking, the U.S., they have a stockpile of almost 600 million barrels, and we, South Africa, only have 10 million barrels stockpiles.
Yeah, let's talk a bit of company news. Northern Platinum recording a half-year profit of up to 60%. Talk us through their performance.
And that is reflected, because we can see that the guys, when it comes to the number of shares issued, it went down by 22.2% because the guys had an earlier termination of their BE transaction, and they also had to offer shares to Royal Bafokeng Investment. But totally, the sales revenue were up 6.8% because of higher USD basket price, but unfortunately was offset by a decrease in sales volume and also a stronger rand US dollar exchange rate. Operating profit up 12.7%, benefiting from those high sales revenue, but impacted by a 20% increase when it comes to the cost of sales. Cash generated down 7.4% because of lower sales volumes and higher than inflation cost increases. And as you said, the profit as headline earnings per share up 60%, and the guys didn't declare any interim dividend.
Let's conclude the conversation with the latest household affordability index. That affects you and me directly, Dada Masilela. It's compiled by the Peter Maritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, and it's showing that basic food, and these are basic food items, they are costing consumers 10% and more today compared to a year ago. With the war that is continuing in Ukraine, inflation, and living through this pandemic, the COVID pandemic, are consumers headed for even more difficult times?
It is very disturbing to remember more than 50% of our people spend more than 50% of their disposable income on food. And you look at the latest inflation figures, our CPI for March was up, is sitting at 5.7%. And when you look at food inflation itself, it sits at 6.7%. And the numbers now are showing from the study that food prices have been up by just more than 10%. That's a very serious concern. And you ask yourself that are these supermarkets and butcheries probably increasing prices more than the way they're supposed to? And yes, we know that this number is backward-looking. Going forward, given the escalation of the war, given what is happening with your sunflower oils, your wheat, corn, stuff like that, oil prices, chances are food prices will still stay at this high elevated prices.
Makwe Masilela is the Chief Investment Officer and founder at Makwe Fund Managers. Thank you very much for that markets update.